Meet Sandra Kolalou, better known as the woman who dismembered her landlord and put her body in the freezer in the house. If this is not the craziest story that I have heard in a long time, this lady was nice enough to open her doors to you, to rent you a room because your life is so much of a chaos. And no one in the house liked you. Everybody in the house was afraid of you. And at the end of the day, you decided to go and kill the landlord, dismember her body, and put body parts in the freezer. Allegedly. I hope your ass rot and go straight to hell after you serve all your time in jail. This is so ridiculous. God bless that lady's soul who was nice enough to open her doors up to an idiot like this. You need to do better with your life. I hope you repent while your ass is in jail. That's where you need to stay, because you are deadly and dangerous.
The family of Francis Walker heard this gruesome story of human remains found in a freezer in Washtenaw. They didn't realize that it was Francis Walker until late yesterday. We did just speak with her brother and sister-in-law, who talk of a woman who was generous and kind and was also in the process of trying to evict one of her tenants. 59-year-old Francis Walker lived at this house on Washtenaw with her husband. They rented rooms to women over the years. And over the summer, her husband tells me that they were having trouble with one of the tenants. He described it as the woman was terrorizing other tenants. The husband is now overseas trying to get back. Now, Walker, well known here in the neighborhood for her talent as a pianist, as an organist, a woman of faith who chose to see the good in people.
Well, she's a really good person, and bad things happen to good people sometimes. Nobody deserves what happened to her.
We are all in distraught right now. We don't know where to pick up the pieces when we heard about this incident yesterday.
She was extremely kind and giving. She always gave more than she took. And she always reached out to people that were isolated or marginalized.
Welcome to Straddled Events. On this channel, we bring you the truth. Sometimes the truth is quite ugly, unbearable, and you just don't want to deal with it. But on this channel, you're gonna get it anyway. You are straddled the fence of good versus evil, right versus wrong. And on this channel, we're going to tell you to do better. Please like, dislike, subscribe, and share the videos. Now let's go.
A suspect is in custody this morning after human remains were found inside a freezer on a home on the city's north side. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Elwood.
And I'm Dina Bair. Thanks for joining us. Glenn Marshall is live at police headquarters with the latest on our top story. Glenn?
Good morning. Now, that woman that actually owns the home, she was renting out this home to tenants for rooms in that area. But now one of those tenants was arrested by police for pulling a knife on someone, and that led police to two gruesome discoveries, one at the beach and one inside that home.
It's very unpleasant, I guess, to hear what happened to her, because I wouldn't expect this to happen in this kind of neighborhood.
And an investigation is shocking this north side community. Monday evening, neighbors and tenants of a home on the 5900 block of North Washtenaw called police after the homeowner had been missing for 24 hours.
We tried calling her, we received no texts or calls, and that's when we thought something had happened or something. So that's when one of the other tenants also reached out for help as well too. We were just trying to figure out what was happening.
Tenants complained to police that they were afraid of an individual who was also renting a room inside that same home. Those tenants told police they noticed this individual called for a tow truck, taking with them a heavy bag. And police confirmed they placed this individual in custody after the tow truck's driver said the person pulled a knife on them.
We learned that this individual dumped a large plastic bag in a garbage can at Foster Beach, and detectives were able to go to that garbage can and see that there were some bloody towels in that garbage can.
That discovery led detectives back to the Northside home where another gruesome finding took place inside of the kitchen.
They eventually discovered human remains in a freezer, at which point we backed out of the residence to secure a search warrant to go back in and retrieve all of evidence properly.
Police say those human remains are of the missing woman. Neighbors told us she played an organ at multiple churches and was connected to a ballet company in Evanston. One neighbor thought something was off when she noticed one of the tenants' strange behavior over the weekend.
I saw a woman carrying a black trash bag coming out of the house on Sunday. Then I thought it was strange because I thought, why is she coming out of the house towards the street when her trash can is in the back? I think I was an eyewitness. I think I saw something going down.
Police have not named the victim nor the suspect they have in custody. In the meantime, that person that they have in custody has been charged with assault for pulling a knife on that tow truck driver, but no charges have been filed in the homicide just yet. Of course, we'll keep you updated as we receive more information on this. For now, we're live outside of police headquarters. I'm Glenn Marshall, WGN News.
All right, good evening, everybody. Today we're here to announce murder charges against defendant Sandra, and the last name I'll spell. It's Kolalou. I know I talked about this, no problem. We talked about this case briefly yesterday, but on the 10th of October at approximately 6 or 7 p.m., officers were called to the address of 5919 North Washtenaw regarding a missing person, female, white, 69 years of age. And things unfolded very quickly when the officers arrived on the scene. The timeline is a little bit sketchy because so many different things happened at the same time. But tenants who live inside this residence with the victim had not seen the victim in a day, and they were concerned for her safety because one of the other tenants who I mentioned, the defendant Sandra, who's charged with murder, many of the tenants who lived in this house were afraid of this individual. There were several calls. We look back, 911 calls regarding tenants and this defendant that was just charged. Tenants inside the residence, they heard a screaming at about 2:30 in the morning Monday night, and that's when the next day at about, like I said, 6 or 7 p.m., they called to report the victim missing because the other tenants couldn't get a hold of the victim. When officers arrived on the scene, the defendant was still on the scene and actually exiting the residence, going to a tow truck, which she had actually ordered using the victim's credit card. Officers attempted to interview her on the scene because the other tenants had mentioned that, we believe something's wrong. We can't locate the missing person, the person who actually owns the house, the victim. That individual, the defendant at that time, said that she knew her rights, didn't want to talk to the police, entered the tow truck and asked the tow truck driver to drive her to Foster Beach where her car was to tow her car. The tenants were afraid for the tow truck driver as well, so they exchanged information with the tow truck driver explaining that they thought this individual was dangerous. The tow truck driver communicated with the tenants and explained when he got to Foster Beach that this individual had placed a large bag in a garbage can. Some of the tenants actually followed the tow truck over there, and they saw that there were some bloody rags in this garbage can, at which point, like I said, the police were already on the scene back at the house, but they notified the police, and then additional police officers went to this scene where they noticed the bloody rags. And when officers were originally on the scene with the tenants who lived inside the house, who reported the individual missing, they couldn't find any signs of blood or foul play. But once they found the bloody rags, the tenants and the police went in, and they were able to find some additional blood inside the tenant's room, at which point they discovered the gruesome remains in a freezer. At that point, like I said, all these things are kind of happening at the same time. I just want to thank the police officers and obviously the tenants who live in this place for coming forward and their cooperation with the police. The defendant at that time was still with the tow truck driver and had threatened the tow truck driver with a knife. Due to the communication between the tow truck driver and the tenants, officers were able to get to that scene immediately and place the defendant in custody for pulling a knife on the tow truck driver. The defendant was then brought back to Area 3 Detective Division, where she immediately invoked her right to remain silent, and she has not had an interview with any police officer. She continued to invoke her right to remain silent. As I mentioned, after they discovered these gruesome remains, the detectives left the residence, secured a search warrant, and went back. And then that search warrant has revealed additional blood the detectives have found inside the victim's bedroom. They found blood on some knives inside the residence, and then unfortunately discovered, like I said, those gruesome remains in a freezer. At that point, detectives, as I mentioned, the garbage can was taken down to the medical examiner's office, and there were bloody rags and linens found in that garbage can. Detectives continued to investigate this crime all day and worked with the cooperation of the other tenants who resided in this residence, who fully cooperated with the police. And then just shortly ago, working with the state's attorney's office throughout the night and throughout the day, were able to secure charges of first-degree murder against the offender and concealment of a homicide. I could take some questions. I know that a lot unfolded at the same time, so I understand there might be some questions regarding the timeline, but I'll do my best to answer any questions you guys have. And real quick, once again, I just want to thank the detectives and the officers involved. The 20th district officers did a remarkable job trying to coordinate with the tenants in the house. And the detectives obviously have worked through the night the last 40 hours or so. So I want to thank everybody who cooperated in order to get this dangerous offender off the street.
Jermon Terry with CBS 2. I have two questions for you. You mentioned that there were calls to 911. Were those recent calls, and how far back do they date?
Yeah, so I actually was talking to the detectives about that. So they, during the course of their investigation trying to charge this offender, they went back and just saw whether 911 calls for their residents. So I don't have the exact answer how far they went back or the details of the calls. That's still something that they're looking into.
Were those calls all related to the suspect that you have charged today?
I don't have that answer. So that's just part of, they just want to see if there are calls to the residents. It appears that some of those calls were related to these tenants being afraid of this one tenant, but I don't have the details on all those calls.
Neighbors, tenants in the apartment said they heard screams 2 a.m. Monday night into Tuesday morning. Where do you believe the crime actually took place, and do you believe the dismemberment of the body actually happened in the home?
So we have to speculate a little bit here, which we obviously don't like to do, but based upon the totality of the evidence, the detectives believe the crime actually occurred in the victim's bedroom, and then they do believe that the dismemberment took place on the first floor of that residence. That part, without the defendant talking, it appears it possibly could have been done with large butcher knives.
Questions for you as well. Also related to the 911 calls. Was Sandra ever arrested? Does she have any previous history?
She does have a previous criminal history for some misdemeanor offenses. It doesn't appear, but like I said, we still have to go backwards on all these 911 calls to see if she was ever placed in custody for any of the calls that came through. So I don't have the answer to those specific calls, but she does have a criminal history for some misdemeanor offenses.
Also going back to I'm just curious, how was she able to do this without other tenants seeing it, and no one else was able to find her body before police did in this freezer?
So I don't want to get too detailed into this, but the way the residence was set up is there were a couple of apartments on the top floor, we'll call it the second floor, and then on the floor where the victim lived, that is the same floor that Sandra resided on as well. And then there was a tenant in the basement, and there were deadbolts, so people had privacy. So that's why. So the residents were, they were very cooperative. When they heard the scream, when they woke up in the morning, they immediately started texting the victim, saying, "Are you okay?" Started calling the victim. The victim didn't answer. There were some texts that were sent back from the victim's phone. It appears from what we know now that the defendant was sending texts from the victim's phone and not answering it. So these tenants, they heard a scream, they didn't know if something was wrong. due to the fact there had been arguments before with this defendant and other people in the residence, the tenants immediately in the morning started to, try to figure out what was wrong. And as the day as they went through the day and they were not able to get a hold of the victim and the victim wasn't responding, they kept feeling more and more was wrong, but they didn't just have free reign of the house. I don't know if you understand. They couldn't just go downstairs and look. And when they did, when the tenants were able to do that, in the beginning they didn't discover any blood, but they knew something was wrong, and that's why finally at 6 o'clock, like, something is definitely wrong here, and let's get the police involved. And I truly want to thank those tenants for their tenacity on realizing that something is definitely wrong, which led to the arrest. So I do want to thank them. Unfortunately, they had to be part of this.
Anthony Ponce with Fox 32. Just another couple questions for me. First, you mentioned these 911 calls in the past and that these tenants were afraid of the suspect here. Can you provide any insight into why they were afraid, and also any insight into a motive or a possible motive here, if this was an ongoing thing, just tension between these two, or possibly some sort of landlord-tenant issue?
So for the possible motive, like obviously we mentioned the defendant invoked her right to remain silent, but for the possible motive, kind of going backwards to the other tenants being a little bit afraid based upon some aggressiveness with this one defendant. So based upon all that, the deceased, the person who owns the residence, had actually served the defendant with like a notice to leave or an eviction notice. And that was done very recently. I don't want to get the day wrong, but I think it might have even been done as recently as of Saturday. So due to that service, that very well could possibly be which escalated this into the defendant becoming extremely angry and committing this horrific act.
Can you give us the pronunciation of Sandra's last name?
Well, I'll give you that offline because I don't know the exact pronunciation, so I will call the officers and get the exact one so I don't get it wrong on air here. All right, thank you.
Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to our ABC7 Chicago YouTube channel.
As you know, obviously a very active and ongoing investigation. So last night, a member who resides at this house, it's a residential house. The owner who lives at the house is the missing person. That owner rents out some of the rooms to people in the house. And one of the individuals in the house had not seen the owner in approximately a day and called the police at approximately 7 p.m. to report that person missing because it wasn't normal to see them for over 24 hours. Detectives verified that missing person, who's now a homicide investigation, was walking around the neighborhood on Sunday. And it's a lot of information. It's all happening at the same time, and obviously it's still an active investigation. But what we do know is the individual who called the police, when the police arrived, that individual told the police that there was another suspect who lived in the residence that the other tenants were afraid of, and that suspect had recently called a tow truck and had carried a heavy bag out to the tow truck. That this tenant as well, who we really want to thank because they did a remarkable job, exchanged numbers with the tow truck driver, and we learned that this individual dumped a large plastic bag in a garbage can at Foster Beach. And detectives were able to go to that garbage can and see that there were some bloody towels in that garbage can, at which point they secured that crime scene, and that entire garbage can and everything that was inside of it was transported to the medical examiner's office this morning. And then based upon that evidence, the detectives were able to go into the residence, and they eventually discovered human remains in a freezer, at which point we backed out of the residence to secure a search warrant to go back in and retrieve all of evidence properly. And in the meantime, in communication with the tow truck driver last night, the tow truck driver actually gave us his location and explained that the person he was transporting had pulled a knife on him. So officers responded to that scene, placed that suspect into custody, transported that individual back to Area 3 Detective Division for that original ag assault with a knife. Once at Area 3, that suspect invoked their right to remain silent regarding the other homicide investigation. So right now, detectives are still executing the search warrant.
A grisly discovery on Chicago's far north side.
One person is in custody being questioned after police found human body parts in a freezer. CBS 2's Charlie DeMar is live near the scene. Charlie, this is quite a story. I know you spoke with a neighbor who saw something suspicious.
And Joe and Erica, this investigation still unraveling that gruesome discovery, that initial gruesome discovery found last night. But if you take a look, investigators are still here. We have seen members of the forensics team coming in and out of the home, officers in gowns head to toe covering their own clothes. But the woman who owned this house was known by most of the people on the block. Some were friendly with her dogs, others were welcomed in the neighborhood. But tonight, that woman is believed to be the victim in this murder. Tonight, a squad car and single strand of crime scene tape sit in front of this home on Washtenaw near Thorndale in the Arcadia Terrace neighborhood. Flowers and candles were left in the pouring rain by those who knew the longtime homeowner and woman believed to be the victim.
When we first moved in 5 years ago, she had come over to welcome us. And then a few years, she had brought us candy for the kids on Halloween.
The homeowner rented out rooms. One of the tenants called 911 after the landlord hadn't been seen, which was uncharacteristic, telling dispatchers there was someone else who lived in the house that everyone was afraid of.
Caller wants to report the friend missing. I guess they're saying that she's at the house and there's blood on the walls and floors.
I was an eyewitness. I think I saw something going down.
Phoebe Salzman says while walking her dog, she saw a woman lugging what appeared to be a heavy plastic bag out of the home.
I thought it was strange because I thought, why is she coming out of the house towards the street when her trash can is in the back? And I recall also, the woman was wearing a black puffy coat, and I thought, that's weird. It's 70 degrees outside.
Police said the suspect called a tow truck to help remove the plastic bag.
And we learned that this individual dumped a large plastic bag in a garbage can at Foster Beach, and detectives were able to go to that garbage can.
Officers then searched the North Side home.
They eventually discovered human remains in a freezer.
The tow truck driver tells CBS 2 he had no idea the woman riding in his truck with the plastic bag was possibly connected to a homicide. He says the woman pulled a knife on him, but he was unharmed. The driver says detectives told him that a human head was found in the freezer.
And it just sends, chills down my spine.
Now, so far, the suspect in this case has not been charged with murder. She's just been charged for pulling the knife on that tow truck driver. As for that beloved victim in this case, she is yet to be formally identified by the medical examiner's office. We are live in the Arcadia Terrace neighborhood. Charlie DeMar, CBS 2 News. Joe and Erica.